Tissue Tea and Testimony Season 1. I'm just sending. So, for those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Camellia Guthrie, and I produce and host and everything else that is Tissue Tea and Testimony, the podcast. And so today, it is the final season, the episode, the podcast. The podcast is a series is a mini series. I don't want to do, hey boo boo, my light is not turning on, but the podcast is a mini series. So it is 7 or 8 episodes per season. We close off, we come back, we start again. And so today is the finale of season 1. And I'm just going to be doing it solo. So I don't have my T tag or anything, so I'm just going to put those in ChatGPT, and that should help. And the thing is, because I don't know what the questions are, then it will be more spontaneous. So how the podcast works, for those of you, especially those of you on TikTok who have never seen it, it's so we start off, we have tea time. So I love tea, so we share tea. I just got this set. So we share tea, and then once we've shared tea, I will tell you what tea I'm drinking, why I chose that tea. Then we do what we call a tea tag or spill the tea. And I answer the questions and I get into the testimony. Then at closer to the end, there's a tissue-worthy moment. And then we wrap up. So we shouldn't be here for very long unless I have a whole lot to say. And I guess if you have questions, you can ask the questions, and I will do my best to answer those. So I'm just typing in the tea tag or the spill the tea questions here, and then we will get started. All right, so today I'm drinking mango dragon fruit, and I think it's the same mango dragon fruit that I think it is that Starbucks uses for its mango dragon fruit lemonade. Yeah, so I'm drinking mango dragon fruit. I'm just steeping it here. I think it's done steeping. I know it's been there for a minute. And so that's the tea I am drinking today. I'm drinking that tea because I particularly love it. I really, really love the mango dragon fruit. It's one of my favorite teas. All right, so for tea tag, it gave me a whole bunch of questions. And I'm just going to answer the number what's something small? Oh, number 10, finish the sentence. These days I'm learning to be still, because I'm Christian, and one of the things I like doing, I like knowing what's happening. I like knowing what's happening. I like knowing what the next step is going to be. But walking with God requires faith, like not knowing what's going to be happening next, what the next step is. And so I am learning that I have to be still in spite of whatever is happening. Like I did a post on Instagram today where I was just saying, like last night I was just here crying out to God. I'm like, what's happening? I don't understand what's happening, because nothing seems to, not nothing, but a lot of things. There's a particular thing that I've been praying to you about, and I fasted and I end up quiet. And then my 6-year-old nephew heard that particular thing, and he was like, Auntie, why is it God's not talking to you? Why were you not hearing God? And I said to him, I don't know, honey. And he said, next time, just go on your knees and clasp your hands and pray and wait, and you will hear God. And so waiting is a part of the standing still, or waiting is standing still. And so that's one of the things I am learning to do right now. Spill the tea. Have you ever had a moment where your faith almost gave out? Right now, right at this, as Dani would say, psychedelic moment. My friend Dani, today's her birthday, she would say, at this psychedelic moment, I'm in that space where I feel like my faith is running low on a particular issue. But I'm still learning to trust. I'm still trying to trust. And as I put on Instagram today, somebody may need to stand in the gap for me and trust for me, because my faith isn't at its maximum in the moment, right? And so those are the two questions that I'm having today. If you have questions or anything that you want to know, please just put it in the chat and I'll try my best to answer. All right, so my testimony for today, one of the things my best friend who is on YouTube now, one of the things we always talk about is just how far we've come as individuals. Like, I was born, I'm Jamaican. I'm Canadian by naturalization, but I'm Jamaican by birth. And where I'm from, I tell the story every chance I get that where I'm from, it's not even on the map. It's registered as unknown. I'm from a country place. Yeah, very remote area. Grew up without running water, grew up without electricity, grew up with pit latrine, I just grew up in the country poor. Yeah, but we never knew we were poor because we never went to bed hungry, went to school and all these different things. I didn't know I was poor until I went to university and I recognized that people lived in separate areas based on, who they were and the kind of jobs they did. I was not familiar with that. But we grew up I grew up in a particular space where my wildest dream would not have dreamt of the life I now live, of the space God has brought me to. And so, like, when my faith is running low and I find myself wanting particular things and God not giving those things to me as badly as I want them, and I keep going to Him and I keep praying and I keep hoping, I'm like, God, give me this thing. As much as I do that, I am able to reflect and, like, what I asked God for my life, He gave me 3, 4, 5 triple, if that's a word, times what I asked Him for. And so I'm trying to trust Him through that. And like, now I'm in a space where God has just outdone Himself, right? And my nephew asked me the other day, he's like, Auntie, are you rich? He asked me for something and I told him no. And he was like, no, Auntie, are you poor? Or are you rich poor or poor poor? And I absolutely am not rich. But from where I come from, I consider myself to be rich. Because one of the things, for me, rich is being able to automate. As simple as that. To automate my bills and know that I won't get an NSF fee. For me, that is real rich, right? And so, like, people will see this part of the journey, but they're not familiar with what happened before. Like, I remember being so broke that my car was on E. And when I checked every account I had, what I could come up with was $9. Like 9 Canadian dollars. And I went to the gas station with that $9, put $9 gas in the tank, and the needle did not move. And I sat there, I prayed, and I went home on $9 gas, on E, pretty much. And it's good to have people in your life who, they know when something is off. They know you so well that they know that something is off. I had a friend who I was talking to, but I was going home tonight. He's like, why you sound like that? And I'm like what? Because one of the things I don't practice, I'm not accustomed to doing, is sharing my problems with people or asking people for things. My best friend Ruth always says, closed mouths don't get fed, right? And so that's not something that I was accustomed to practicing, opening my mouth and asking for things. And he was like, why you sound like that? And I said to him, nothing. And he's like, no, something is wrong. And I just couldn't help it. Like, I was so broken at the point. And I said to him, like, my car is on E. I just had the last $9, and that's what I took to the gas station. And he's like, why wouldn't you have said something? And he went that night and he searched and he sent me $100. And that's how I was able to buy gas put in my car until I got paid. But the thing is, let me tell you something. I'm going to be as honest. At that time, I was making $32,500 a year. A year, right? And so even when the pay came, I was still battling for life because I didn't know first of all, I had rent, I had car notes, I had all these different bills to pay. And that pay that I was getting, that was like about $1,500 or something a month. A month. This car payment, Lord, when I look back, no. When by the time I took the rent out of it, there was nothing left to pay the car. And I'm going to be as honest as possible, like vulnerable as possible with you guys here. I remember my best friend, she was there with me. So in Canada, there are some loan places that they give you money and the rent they give you at some extremely high interest rate. One of them is cash money. So there's cash money, there's cash for you, and there is pay today or something like that. I was a regular customer at all three. The people at cash money, they knew me. They knew me by name. So what I would do is I would go I'm laughing now. But I would go to cash, I would go to cash for you, and I would, let's say I went to cash, was it cash for you? Cash, whatever the place is, cash money, cash whatever. I'd go there and let's say I'd borrow $1,000, right? So I'd take $1,000 from them, and then you have 2 weeks to pay it. You have to pay it at the next fortnight. And so I would take the $1,000 from cash for you, and then wait a week and go to cash money, and then take another 1,000, and then so I take that 1,000 to repay cash for you, and then I went to pay today. I had a cycle, and that's how I was surviving. One loan shark after the other. And I remember there was a particular time when I went, my rent was short. At the time, my rent was like, I don't remember, maybe $700 and something dollars. And I remember I went to cash for you to go borrow, because it was the day of the rent and nothing was happening. And I remember I went to cash for you to borrow the rent. And when I went in, the people them said all I could get was $200. They said all I could get was $200. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with $200? They're like, well, first of all, at that time, my credit was in the ground. My credit was probably less than 300. Well, less than 300. So the fact that they were willing to give me 200 at this point was a miracle. I don't remember if I took the 200. I think I took the 200, and then I went in my car and I sat there. I think I sat there and cried. I don't even remember what happened. But that's how that's what my life was like. And then I remember there was the other place called Fairstone. So Fairstone interest rate was like 29 or 39% or somewhere 49, somewhere. I think it was 39%. That was the interest rate on the loan. And I went in one time, and I think my sister had found out about Fairstone, and she's like, well, you can get the money there. That's an art. There's an absolute art to poverty, Ruth. And I remember they said we can go to Fairstone and we can get some money. I went down there with my 300 plus credit score, and Fairstone was like, oh, whoa, your credit is so good. Your credit is so good, we can give you $10,000. And I'm like, oh, yes, give me the $10,000. And so I took borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. That's absolutely what that does. And so I went to Fairstone and I got the $10,000. Got the $10,000 from Fairstone. Pay today, pay up cash for you, pay up all the other people then. And before long, that money was done. I used it to pay all the bills I could pay, and it was done. But then I'm like, okay, so what now? And before you know it, that money was there, and it started accumulating interest. Because where am I going to get $10,000 to pay them from? Where am I going to get it from? Me, I'm at $1,300 per month. Yeah? By the time I'm done barely paying the rent, barely paying the car note, where am I going to get 10,000? And so it was there, and it kept accumulating interest until I was just paying the bare minimum. And I remember I had a friend at the time who he was very, very much into finances and getting your finances right. And sometimes we meet people and we don't know what purpose people serve in our lives, but they come for a reason, and that was his purpose in my life, no lie. And he started talking to me about finances and how to budget and make sure you pay off this and your RSP and your TFSA and all those different things. And so I'm like, okay, at that time I had just gotten a job, and this job was paying me $65,000 a year. I'm like, yo, I'm a score. At this point, I was like, nobody can talk to me. I had leveled up. And so when I got that $65,000, it was like close to 20 something thousand dollars. 30, there we go, 30%. Yes, Ruth, interest rate. And so when I got that raise from the new job, because I don't like being in debt. It's so stress. It's one of the most stressful things ever. Yeah. And what I did, I think all of that money, once I made sure I paid my rent, I paid my car note, and everything else. Some of them I was calling the electricity company to make in to make arrangements to pay the bill. My phone was constantly cut off. There were times when, I'm gonna tell you a story about that and then come back to this. So there is an art. So there are some companies here in Canada where when your phone is cut off, it cut right off. Like you can't make call and nobody can call you. I learned that there was a particular company when they disconnected your phone, you were still able to take calls, you're just not able to make calls. And because the other company, every time it cut off my phone, I was so embarrassed because people would call me and it would just tell them that my phone was no longer in service. I switched company to the one that when they cut off the phone, it would leave space for people to call you without recognizing that your telephone was cut off. And so I switched. And look here, every other month, my phone was disconnected. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't pay the bill. Right? So I did those things when I got the $65,000, and then everything else, I just kept putting it into the Fairstone loan. I kept putting it into the Fairstone loan until it got to a point where I think I owed. First of all, I went in. The guy told me to go in and ask them if I could get an amnesty, or they could do some kind of consolidation of sort, and they gave me an amnesty. At this point, I was owing more than the $10,000 that I had borrowed because I was paying the bare minimum. And so I went in and they said, well, we can bring it down. I think it was about $7,000 or $8,000. That's the most that they could, that's what they could do. And so I set out with that plan. I'm like, I'm going to pay this $8,000 or whatever it was off. And I would give them every extra cent I had. I wasn't buying clothes. I wasn't, well, I'm not one to be flossing. Like, no, I do. I do kind of different. I mean, I always buy stuff. But at that time, every extra cent I had, it was going to Fairstone. And I remember when I had the final payment, because they gave you a period in which you should pay it. And I remember when I had the final payment, I had paid $6,000. And I had the last, I don't remember how much it was. I think it was like $500. And I went into them. I'm like, look here, I don't have another dollar. This is all I have. So it means, I think it was $7,000. And so I had $500. And I went to them the day and I'm like, this is the last $500 I have. I don't know where to borrow, beg, steal, nothing. I don't know where to get any more from. Can you accept this $500 and we close the loan? And the lady was so nice and she's like, I don't know, I can't make the decision. So I'm going to ask my boss. And she went to her boss and asked her boss, and her boss said yes. So I ended up paying $6,500 to pay off that loan. And that's how I got out of that Fairstone loan. And little by little, I mean, I ended up having to go back to cash money. I think I had just stuck with cash money after that. I ended up having to go back to cash money, and I remember paying off. And then after that, I ended up leaving that job, and I got another job that was paying, I think it was like $80,000. And I'm like, yes, I'm rich now. And so that's when I stopped going to cash money and cash for you and all those places. But look here, I have had to endure all of that. I remember things were so bad one time because I'm an immigrant. I'm an immigrant from Jamaica. I came here to do postgrad studies and just never went back home. And one of the things when I came, it was the time when Canada was asking everybody for Canadian experience. Where are you supposed to get it from if you're just coming? I came here with about almost 10 years experience. And when I came, they were asking me for Canadian experience and I couldn't get a job. And I remember I was working in a factory. And I went there one day and I never went back because you needed steel toe shoes to wear to this place and I couldn't afford it. And my mom, God bless her soul, she went to the thrift store and she found a pair of steel toe boots. I'm a size 6, right? But when you're a size 6 with a steel toe shoe, you need to size up, at least a half a size or a size up. That was the only one they had and she bought it and I wore it to the factory work. They call it picking. You were picking clothes. So it's like these suits that go into these rich stores. You just had to ensure that they were tagged properly and lined up. That's what it was. By the time I got to the place, my feet were swollen. And I said to the lady, "Can I sit down?" And she's like, "No, you have to stand up, miss. You have to stand up." And I'm like, "Miss, I can't." And I remember when the lunch break came, I couldn't even eat. I had to just take off the shoes and sit on a bench until it was time to go back. That evening, I had to take the bus, and I was walking on the sides of my feet to go home. For about a week, my feet were swollen. I was in the house drawing up and down on my bottom because I could not walk. So I have gone through things. And so sometimes people will see you and they will think that, hey, it was all flowery and something, and they think they can't share their story with you because you wouldn't understand. Because no, it's all because of God's grace. I remember paying so much NSF fee, everything that went through my account, NSF, and an NSF fee here is $45. There were times when I remember one time I ended up calling the bank and I'm like, "Look here, if I couldn't pay the $30, why I think I'm gonna be able to pay the $45?" Things would go through my account for $10, $15, and it would come back NSF. So that $15 became 15, 20, $60 because the $45 was not attached to it. And I remember calling the bank one day, a particular bank, and I explained to them, I'm like, "Look here, life rough. I am struggling. And so when you keep charging me this $45 for, and I don't have it." And I was talking to the lady, I'm like, "Is there any way that you could give me back some of those NSF fees?" And she ended up giving me back $280 in NSF fee. And it wasn't for any long period of time, because that's just how it was. There was no, which is why I now say I feel like I am rich based on where God has brought me, because I don't pay NSF fees anymore. For me, that is that's it. That is the goal. That is the goal. I have been so broke that I searched my house for 25 cents to make up my bus fare, and I could not. I could not find 25 cents. I remember getting a job downtown after suffering for so long, right? I remember getting a job downtown, and I had to take the train downtown Toronto, and I had to take the train. And I didn't have the first dollar. Nobody, my mother didn't have it either. She'd given me everything that she had. And if you go on the train without a ticket, they would not lock you up, but they would give you a ticket. If you went on the train without paying, they would give you a ticket. And I got a ticket because I thought I was trying to rob the system. I just never have it. I just did not have the money. But how did your feet get back into the shoes after lunch? At that time, it wasn't as swollen, girl. It wasn't as swollen, right? So it had started swelling up, but it wasn't as swollen. But when it went in there, when you're size 6, you were size 5, and your feet had to be like this in there. This is how it was the whole time, Ruth. The whole time. And so I don't remember what I was saying. Oh yeah, I ended up getting a ticket. I was trying to get the little work to get the money, but because I couldn't find the bus fare, they ended up ticketing me. But one of the things I think, even though I say, closed mouths don't get fed, when I find myself in certain situations where my back is against the wall, I have a tendency to find at least one person I could be honest with. And when you get a ticket on the train, you can go to the train station and you can talk to them. And, like when you get a ticket and you go to the court and the lobby. And I went and I explained to the lady, I'm like, "Miss, this was not my intent. I don't have the first dollar." And I think I told her that I didn't have the money to come, and I didn't have the money to go. And she ended up reducing, because the ticket was $100, and she ended up reducing the ticket to $20 and gave me a ticket to go home that evening. So I have gone through the ringer. And so that's I think that's just one of my testimonies. And so if there's anybody who is at a place now where you feel like life will never change, it does. Life changes, which is one of the reasons I don't believe in, taking your own life, because I feel it robs God of the opportunity to show up for you and to show you what he can do. Because if I had tapped out, then I would not have seen the blessing. And now looking back, I'm not going to tell you that I am so happy that I went through all of those things. No, but I feel like it gives me a certain level of relatability. It gives me this, it keeps me humble, because I know that at any minute life can change and you can get back to where you were. I'm also a survivor, right? I'm able to navigate spaces and things that maybe ordinary person who has not experienced certain things would not be able to navigate. And so, wherever you are, you find yourself this evening, for all of you who are on TikTok or those of you on YouTube, life gets better. Life gets hard. Sometimes they say it gets harder before it gets better. But life, Ruth and I laugh, but life gets hard. Take bad things make drugs. But life gets hard. Like I have experienced. I used to clean hotel rooms. Yeah? I'm fat now. At that time, I was probably about 100 pounds. So I have on more weight, and I was cleaning 14 hotel rooms every Sunday. And I mean 14, the beds are as heavy as lead. Every Sunday after I was done cleaning those hotel rooms, my back was in a ringer because I already had a bad back. I met in an accident when I was much younger. And then somebody gave me some old clothes to carry to Jamaica, and the bag was too heavy. When I got to the airport, they wouldn't help me lift it, and I lifted it and it shifted my back. Right? And so between the accident and the heavy load that I lifted, I had a bad back already. But every Sunday, I would show up at this hotel and clean 14 hotel rooms. Yeah, and that is was and you were getting less than minimum wage. I was getting less than minimum wage, but that money was the money that I used to pay bus fare to go back to school, to go to school in the week, and because that's all it could do. That is all it could do, and life has been rough. Life has been rough, but God has been good. God has been good. And one of the things I also want to share, I know the story is all over the place, but one of the things I also want to share is to learn skills as you go along. I remember just before I left Jamaica, Jamaica is tropical. For those of you who do not know, Jamaica hot. At no point do you really need to wear a scarf in Jamaica. I can't think of it unless you're going up in the hills and it's super cold. But I remember just before I left Jamaica, I started learning to crochet. And people were like, why you learn to crochet? Like, why you gonna do crochet here and something? Nobody else. And I learned to crochet. When I came to Canada for school back in 2014, and I couldn't find work, right? Before I found a hotel job, I couldn't find work. I was crocheting scarves and mittens and gloves and selling those. And those were the things that's what kept me. Those were the things that, it would allow me to get, because I would sell, let's say I sold a scarf for $20 or $25. That $25, and if I sell two, that's $50 that I would use to help to make up to pay bus fare to go back to school. So learn skills, because you never know how these skills can help you survive. I have another story. I remember when I just came, I think somebody had stolen the computer I had in Jamaica. Yeah, somebody stole the computer I had in Jamaica. And so I came without a computer. And by the time you're done, converting the little money that you bring, it's nothing. And I remember I did most 90% of my assignments I did on my phone. I had a Samsung phone, and I bought a keyboard. I still have that keyboard. It is somewhere about the place here. I still have that keyboard. I think I paid like maybe $30 something for that keyboard. And it was my phone that I attached the keyboard to and did most of my assignments. There was one time when, God, I don't know if this is wrong. If it is wrong, forgive me. But I remember at one point my poor fingers were getting numb. My eyes, I don't see well. I have astigmatism here, and I don't see well already. And I remember it had gotten so bad that I'm like, no, I need a computer. Or I think I was doing an assignment that needed a computer. And I went to Walmart and I borrowed money from somebody. And I went to Walmart and I bought an Acer computer. But I bought the Acer computer because knowing that I didn't have the money to pay back the person, Walmart gives you, I think it's like 30 days to bring it back. And look here, I went and I borrowed the money, bought the computer, and I did everything that I could do during the time. And I think it was like on day 28. Can I go live with you, please? I really want to go live with someone. Rough enough. And I think it was like on day 28 or day 29. I scrubbed the computer of everything that I had done on it, brought it back to Walmart, and took back the money, gave it to the person. I think I did it twice. brought back the money to the person so that I could pay them back, and I wasn't in debt because I knew that I could not afford to find the money to give them back. I think I did it on another time, maybe later on. I think it was coming up to finals, and there was some stuff that I needed to do, and I went back to Walmart and I got the money and I bought the computer and used it. But I think I brought it back like maybe day 2025 at this point, and that's how I survived. But everything I did for school, the textbooks, couldn't afford the textbooks. And so when you register every for each semester, they give you a certain amount of papers, a paper to print. So they give you printing privilege for a particular period of time. And what I would do, because they had all the books on campus in the library, in the bookstore, I would go to the library or to the bookstore, get the book, photocopy the pages that I needed, and then return the book. Right now, I still have it back in Toronto because I'm from Toronto. I live in Edmonton now. Right now, I have a whole textbook that I photocopied. I don't even know if these things are legal. I don't turn your hand. I don't even know if these things are legal. But if they're not, God forgive me. Because at the time, I was just trying to survive. Which is why now I try not to be too judgmental of people who are doing things when they're trying to survive. Because when you're at a certain place, you can say anything that you want. But were you in that person's shoe, you would make the decisions you make would probably be worse. Right? So I try not to be too judgmental. But that is how I survived a whole lot of my time here as an immigrant. But they have this thing that when you move to Canada, give yourself about 5 years and things should start balancing out. And about year 5, 6, 7, I don't remember, I think about year 7, things started balancing out. I remember I turned 30. And when I turned 30, I was the most depressed outside of last year. Last year I went through a whole bout of depression. Still at the tail end of that, and that's a whole other testimony. But I remember when I turned 30, I was the most depressed, the most confused. Because here I was, I left my good job in Jamaica. When I was in Jamaica, I was good. Right? I was making money. I was using one paycheck to cover 2 months. I was living paycheck to paycheck, right? And I came here and it's almost, well, it's not almost. I was starting over from scratch. I remember there's so many stories. I remember when I came, I was living in Malton at the time, in Malton in Mississauga, and there was a young lady that my mom knew. She had a daughter. I don't know if I'm supposed to call the place, but she had a daughter who worked at Tim Hortons, and the daughter said that she knew the manager. She could get me a job. And so she spoke to the manager, and the lady said, yes, just come and do the interview on something. And she said I was supposed to come on Sabbath. I'm like, well, I couldn't come on the Sabbath because I was Adventist. I could come after Sabbath. She said, okay, come sunset. And what we discussed was that I was going to go and I was going to, do something more in the back of the kitchen. I don't know, I flip something, make tea, flip something. That's that. So I'm like, I'm not better than flipping tea. I just want my money. And when I went, and I cried that day so badly, because when I went, it was this Indian lady, and she took one look at me and said, oh, sorry. And I'm like, sorry for what? She's like, oh, we don't have anything available. But I'm like, we spoke yesterday, and you said that. She's like, yeah, the only thing I have, and this was winter, it was coming up to winter, right? So it had started snowing and something. And she's like, we only have KJ, no, we only have one availability, and it's for you to pick up the trash outside in the middle of winter. At this point, I couldn't even afford a proper winter jacket. And I'm like, we spoke yesterday, and I'm here today, and you're going to and wash the bathrooms and pick up the trash outside in the middle of the winter. And I'm like, no. And it's not like I was better than doing that, but it's just that she saw me, and all of a sudden the job was no longer available. I don't have a proper jacket. What you sending me out in the cold to do? And I remember that was I think that was probably one of the first times. That was earlier on when I had walked to this place. This place was maybe about 30 minutes from my house. And I walked there and walked back crying. Because I'm like, God, this is not what I came here to do. Is this what my life is going to be? Is this what my life is going to be? And I've had so many instances where I could have given up. There are many times that I wanted to go back home, and I told my mother that, you know what, I'm going to go back home, and she's like, no, bear it out. And so, like, God, there's so many stories, and I don't want to start crying here. I don't want. I think I've been talking for how long? 35 minutes. I don't want to start crying here, but I have been through some things in this country. Some things I have. I faced discrimination. I have. It was just rough. It was just rough. But one of the things I am so thankful for, and Ruth is always reminding me of that, is like, just look like what God has done in your life. You could not have imagined it. And so I am eternally grateful. I try not to be I try to be grateful. I try not to complain too much, even though other areas in my life are not working out how I want them to work out and stuff. I'm looking at the areas that have worked out. Because if there's one thing, is that it says God is going to do what he said he would do. And sometimes we don't even know what it is that he said, but it is going to be better and greater than anything that we could have asked, thought, or imagined. You make create what? I don't know what that is saying. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to ask. But I think that's the testimony I want to share with you today. God is good. God is faithful. He might not show up when you want him to. And I'm still struggling with that, because I'm like, if I need you, no, why are you not here? But when he does show up, he shows off and he shows out. So now I'm in this place where I remember I left Toronto about 2 years ago. One of the greatest things I've ever wanted was outside of a family, because for me, of having a family success, having like a really good, loving husband and kids. No, I'm not so sure about the kids anymore, but just a family that's what success is for me. That's the mark of a success for me. But I remember wanting a house so badly. And it's like I was in Toronto, and no matter how much money I made, I couldn't afford the door on the house. I couldn't afford a door post. I couldn't afford the nail that goes into the house. And I moved to Edmonton. God gave me a job. Tell some I have so many testimonies. The job I have now, let me tell you the story. I'm gonna wrap up soon. But I remember, so my background is journalism. I did that for most of my career, but my post grad is in corporate communications. I didn't do anything in corporate communications outside of what I did in school. I left school and I did project management for about 6 months, and I went right back into journalism. So I didn't have much experience in corporate communications. And I remember when the pandemic started, I've always been writing and stuff, and somebody said to me, why not start a business? So I started a business writing for people and, editing and stuff. And at the time, I was at a radio station in Toronto. Don't need read that see crap. Come, people are just. Oh, thank you, Ruth. Yeah, at the time I was the news and production manager, something like that, at a radio station in Toronto, and I was producing a weekly program. Somebody had reached out to me to ask me if they could get their client on the program, and I worked it out. And after I started the business, the same lady, she took a liking to me, and she called and she's like, would you want to? And you're still in the middle of more. I know, right? And she's like, would you want to work with me, to freelance with me? I'm like, in my head, I'm like, no, like, I don't know you. So, why would I do that? But I went to my very wise mother, and I told her that somebody reached out. They wanted me to collaborate with them. At this time, I had started my business, but I wasn't sure. And she's like, what's the worst thing that could happen? Yeah, what's the worst thing that could happen? So I told her yes. Turned out it was lovely. She became one of my main clients, and through her, I just got several other clients. And when I did that, that was my first experience really doing corporate communications. I knew how to do these things, but the technicalities of them I didn't know. And we did the press releases, we did all of those different things. And I remember when I was doing the business was doing well, but I like having a 9 to 5. Not a lot of people, but I liked having a 9 to 5 because I liked having my health insurance. I like having all of those things. And so I wanted a 9 to 5 to provide that. And I got this job Shoot. Oh my gosh, my battery died over on TikTok. I got this job and I got so thrown off. My battery died. Yeah, I got this job, and what happened was everything that I had done with this lady, everything that I had done on this job was what was required for that other job that I was doing. And so I ended up getting the job. It was miserable. It was a job from hell. And so I ended up leaving that job. So the job I now have, because I had just started out, I had done communications assistant, communications. I was never a communications manager. And so how it typically goes is that you become a communications assistant and you work yourself up to an advisor. I saw this advisor job role and I'm like, nobody's going to hire me for that because I don't have the experience that they're looking for and something. And so I saw it on LinkedIn and I saved it on LinkedIn. And then LinkedIn, the day it was due, the day of the deadline, LinkedIn reminded me that I had saved the job. And it's like, apply. I'm like, okay, let me apply. What's the worst thing that could happen? And I ended up applying to the job. I wasn't even giving it thought because I'm like, they're not going to hire me. I'm not qualified. Turns out, and I think it was like the same week, they reached out that they wanted to do an interview. And the process happened so quickly. I did the interview. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. The people reached out the next week. They said it would take some time. The next week they reached out wanting to give me a job offer. And when I started the job, my boss at the time said to me, we didn't want to lose you. Your resume was so impressive. We didn't want to lose you, so we just ensured that we gave you the offer as quickly as possible. That job has been an absolute blessing. Absolute blessing. One of the things I take from that is that the struggles that we go through in life, the experience that we have, there's something in each of those struggles that we're going to need to take us to the next thing. Because I was struggling through the communications assistant role and all those skills that I was learning, I needed them for this job. That has been an absolute blessing. So go through your seasons, whatever season you find yourself in life, go through your seasons. Walk. Sometimes you feel yourself slipping. Sometimes you feel like you cannot do it on your own, and most of the times you can't. And when you feel like you're letting go, allow God to hold you, because He will hold you. When you feel like you're at your wit's end, just tap into God. And I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but I don't know if everybody here is Christian or everybody here believes in God. But if you don't believe in God, I say try Him. What's the worst thing? Try Him and see if He's going to show up for you. He showed up for me so many ways. I remember my nephew asking me this week, like, how do you know, like, suppose there's no God, like, how do you know that God is real? And I was saying to him, for me, He is real because He's done so many things for me. He's shown up for me in so many ways. He's kept me in so many seasons of my life. And so for me, that is how I know that He's real. And so go through your seasons, hard as they be. If you can't do it alone, find at least one person. I have my person. My person is Ruth Ann. Yeah, Ruth Ann is with me through every season of life. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, up, down, she is there. Find you at least one person that you can trust, who can walk through life with you. And just keep holding on to God. And if you find yourself slipping, ask God to hold you, because He's going to do for you way more than you could ever think, ask, or imagine. And that is my testimony for today. Let me see if I can find a question for the tissue worthy moment. Questions for tissue worthy moment. I didn't come prepared with those, sorry. It's coming. So, if the first question is, what's one prayer God answered that still brings you to tears? Oh my gosh, one prayer God answered that still brings me to tears. I can't think of any that brings me to tears. So let me see if was there ever a time you thought God had forgotten you? Right now, right this very minute. Last night I was down here bawling on my knees with hands held high. I'm like, God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you turned a deaf ear to my plea? I was quoting every psalm possible. Yeah. So right at this moment, I feel forgotten by God, as it relates to a particular area of my life that I have been praying about. As I said earlier when I just started, I fasted for 7 days and asked God for one particular thing. One thing. The man silent. Not a word. Not a word in English, Spanish, Patois, nothing. I have not heard a word from him. And so, like deep down, I know that he's working. But sometimes I don't want to have to dig that deep to feel and to know that he's working. I just want to see his hand moving. I want to see something happening. And so, in this moment, in particular areas of my life, I feel like God has forgotten about me. I feel like He has not heard any of my prayers. I feel like maybe I did something that I wasn't supposed to do, or I didn't do something that I was supposed to do. But um, is He still my rod and staff? Is He still good? Is He still great? Is He still God? Absolutely. And so, as much as I feel the way I do, one of the things I'm big on is that feelings are not always facts. And so, um, yeah, I'm just trusting that my feelings are not facts. And He's working even though I can't see Him and I don't feel Him and I feel forgotten by Him. And yeah, that's my testimony for today. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ruthie. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, for commenting. Those of you who commented rude things, I pray that you will take a second look and recognize that that's not kind. Let's create kind spaces for people to exist in. Yeah, without being rude or anything. And one of the things I find, I'm going to wrap up, but yesterday I was telling my nephew that hurt people. And people don't just do things out of nothing. There's always this cry for help. There's always this need for something else or something more that people are looking for, and we go about it in different ways that sometimes end up hurting people. So for those of you who joined and you put nasty things in the comments, I'm going to pray for you. For those of you who joined and you put nice comments in there, or you had questions or encouraging words, thank you so very much. This is the final episode of season 1 of Tissue Tea and Testimony, the podcast. And I am happy to be here and wrapping this season up. Season 2 starts closer to the end of August because I'm going on vacation for most of August. So season 2 starts sometime in August. I trust that you will come back. And in the meantime, you will engage with the content that will be posted here. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow, do all the things. Until next season, have yourselves a good day. Bye.